Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In this video, we are going to solve one of the psychology's past paper. This is paper 1. From May-June 2023, the paper's component is 1-2 and this is for 1 hour 30 minutes. The first question from this paper says, from the study by Schechter and Singer, 2 factors in emotion, identify which one of the following groups self-rated the highest score for palpitations in the euphoria condition. So from this study, this is something we should be remembering. So from this study, we know that it was epinephrine ignorant group which rated the highest score for palpitations. The next question says, in the anger condition, an observer recorded the participant's response to the stooge using several categories. In the anger condition, this is also one of the keywords of the question. In the anger condition, an observer recorded the participant's response to the stooge using several categories. We have to outline how the category of watches was operationalized in this study. So if it's for 2 marks and it says outline, so you are going to get 1 mark per correct point. So let's say if I am to write the answer for this question, it should be, first point should be that the participants makes no verbal response. They did not agree or disagree with the stooge. These were the 2 things which the observer recorded. Okay, so moving on to the next question. It says, from the study by Baron-Cohen, eyes test, name 2 tests. You just have to name 2 tests used in this study other than the eyes test. Okay, so other than the eyes test, the 2 tests apart from the eyes test were autism spectrum, quotient, and the other one was intelligence quotient. These 2 were the tests which were used in this study. So okay. Part B from question 2 says, for one of the tests you named in A, identify one strength of this test. You can use either of the ones you mentioned, either autism spectrum or intelligence quotient. So if I am using IQ, for example, intelligence quotient, so you can write that IQ, just a minute, IQ is a standardized psychometric test, so it can be reliable. That is one of the strengths of this test. Or if there is any strength you are planning to write for both, like you can write that quantitative data, like both of the tests, either autism spectrum or intelligence question, doesn't matter which one you are writing. For both of them, you can mention that they provide quantitative data, so it is easier to compare and analyze the data. Okay, then we have question 3, which says, in the study by Canli, all brain scans and emotions, participants viewed scenes. Outline how the participants' emotional arousal towards the scenes was measured. So basically, you have to tell how the dependent variable in this study was measured. So in this, if it's for 3 mark, you are going to get 1 mark for per correct answer because it says outline. So you have to mention 3 correct answers. Three correct points. So there was a scale. In which 0 meant not emotionally intense at all, and 3 meant extremely intense. So this is 1 point. Second can be there were 4 choices, or you can also write there was a 4-point scale because like 0, 1, 2 and 3, 4 points, and it was a scale of buttons that they had to press. They were buttons, like a scale was in the form of buttons with which the participants had to press in order to choose the intensity of the scene they were shown. Now moving on to part B of question number 3, it says explain one weakness of how the participants' emotional arousal towards the scene was measured. So if the question says explain, you are going to get 1 mark for identifying the weakness and the second mark for linking it to the study. So for example, I can write, let's say we identify the weakness that it was a forced choice because you don't know if the participants want to rate it more intense than 3, but they were given a forced choice because it was a close-ended close-ended choice. So it was a forced choice, the scale which was used. So you have identified the problem over here. So now you're explaining it. So the responses may not exactly represent how the participants actually felt towards the scene. Then question number 4 says that from the study by Bandura et al., describe how the participants were allocated into the experimental group. So you don't have to write the whole procedure, you just have to write about when the participants were being allocated to the experimental groups, the aggressive and the non-aggressive one, and males and females and all of that. And if the question says describe and it is for 4 marks, so you just have to mention 4 correct points related to the process. So let's say the students were observed and rated by their teachers plus the experimenter on aggression. These are the stuff you need to remember from the study, from the whole process. This is 1 point. And then what happened was each participant had a composite score on aggression from the 4 scales, the ones which talked about the verbal aggression, the physical aggression, and all of those, the anxiety during aggression. Those were the scales that the teachers and the experimenter used to allocate the students and rate the students for aggression. And then third point can be participants were arranged in groups of 3s who had similar scores for aggression, and then they were randomly you can write there was an equal chance of being in one of the experimental groups. This is because all the participants were treated in the same way. They were all measured for their regression in the same way. So all of them were having the same criteria. So they all had equal chances to be in part of either of the groups. And then the part B says one conclusion was that imitation of aggression in children is influenced by the sex of the model. Outline one other conclusion from this study. If it is for 2 marks, then what you have to do is you have to outline a full conclusion, a full detailed conclusion. If it is a brief or a partial conclusion, then you're only going to get 1 mark for this. So let's just write it down. A full detailed conclusion was that witnessing an aggressive act is enough to produce aggression in the person who observed it. Like just witnessing someone else being indulged in an aggressive act is enough for us as humans to produce the same aggression. You can also write about how boys are more likely to imitate aggression compared to girls. This was also another detailed conclusion from this study by Bandura. And you can also write children can observe an adult and then imitate behavior in the absence of that adult. This was also one of the conclusions. So these are the things you can mention for a whole 2-marker question. But if you're just writing that people will imitate aggression, or you are just writing that boys are more likely to imitate aggression, this is only going to give you 1 mark because you're not comparing the boys' result to the girls' result. If you are writing boys are more likely to imitate aggression compared to girls, then you are going to get a full mark. Then let's see what question 5 says. It is in experiment 2 of this study by Laney. Experiment 2 of this study by Laney, all false memory. Participants completed both the memory or belief questionnaire and the food preferences questionnaire. You have to describe one result from the memory or belief questionnaire and one result from the food preferences questionnaire. It says you must use data for one of these results. So for this, let's just write the first result from memory and belief. You can write that there were more participants in the love group who reported a memory compared to the control group. The people who were put in the love group, that they were given the false memory regarding the liking of asparagus, they reported more of the memory compared to the control group. If you want to write data for this one, you can write about the percentage that for the love group, the memory recorded was 28% of participants. Now let's write the results for food preference questionnaire. You can write that believers reported more desire to eat asparagus at the second session, like the follow-up when they were called after 2 weeks, compared to the control group. It is important to mention the comparison for a full mark. And if you want to write the data for this, you can write that the mean rating for the believers. Group rose by 1 point. So for this, you are going to get 5 marks. You can write data for either of them. It's not important that you write for both of them. I have just written it for the sample that these are the data you can use. You have to, because like link it with this study, right? You have to use the data from the study, the evidence. And then question 6 says that outline 2 assumptions of the social approach. You must use an example from a core study of each assumption. So for this, if it is for 6 marks, yeah, it is for 6 marks. So you are going to get full marks, like 2 marks, 2 full marks for a complete assumption, and then 1 mark for a partial assumption. So make sure you write 1 mark, like a full assumption for 2 full marks, and then just a second. Yeah. You have to also give examples, so you are going to get 2 marks for each example as well if it is full and detailed. So let's say one assumption from social approach can be that behaviors or your cognitions can be influenced by others in a social group or gathering. So your behaviors or cognitions can be influenced by other individuals in a social gathering. So you're going to get 2 marks for this, and then you can also write about, for example, in Milgram study, the experimenter in the lab coat used prods to get the participants to continue to give electric shocks. So this is how the behavior of the experimenter influenced the behavior, the act of the participants. The second can be behaviors or cognitions can be influenced by groups in a social setting. In the first one, we were only talking about other individuals, or it can be only one other individual which can influence your behavior or cognition. But in the second assumption by social approach, we're talking about whole big groups, big chunks of people who can have an impact or influence on our behavior. So in this, you can write that, for example, in Bilyavin study, in this study by Bilyavin, some people only helped the victim only after the model had intervened and they saw other people helping the victim. So once they saw other people helping the victim, a group of people helping the victim, they also started to help the victim. So this tells how a whole group can influence your behavior. And then question number 7 says, suggest 2 real-world applications based on the study by Dement and Kleitman. Your suggestions must be ethical. So here we can, if it is for 4 mark, then you are going to get 1 mark for what the application is and then 1 mark for how it will be achieved. And since you have to write like 2 real world applications, so like first mark will be for suggesting what the first application is, and then the second mark will be for how that first suggestion will be achieved. Third mark is will be for suggesting your second application, and then the fourth mark will be for suggesting how that second suggestion will be achieved. I'll just write down, like for example, it is from dependent treatment, so it can help people with sleep disorders. First mark, patients can be attached to an EEG monitor, because this is what was happening with this is what was happening in the study by dependent treatment. Participants had EEG monitors attached to see if brain waves while sleeping are typical or normal or not. So first mark you can get for suggesting how suggesting your real world application, which was it can help people with sleep disorders, and how you can achieve that. Patients can be attached to an EEG monitor to see if brain waves while sleeping sleeping are typical which means normal or not. And then second, you can write that it can be used in therapy involving dream analysis. First, like third point technically, and then how you can achieve it. Patients can be woken up in REM sleep and asked to recall the content of their dream immediately after being woken up, because that is when REM sleep is most effective. Like the remembering is most effective. You remember your dream more well when you are asked to narrate it immediately. So 4 marks, you can gain 4 marks over here, 2 marks per point. And then we have 8th question, which says, two friends, Haji and Dottie, are discussing the ethics of the study by Yamamoto et al. Chimpanzee helping. Haji thinks that the study is ethical, but Dottie thinks that the study is not ethical. Explain one reason why Haji is correct and one reason why Dottie is correct using evidence from the study. This part is important because you need to mention evidences from the study in order to get full marks. So let's say if Haji is correct, so why is Haji correct? What does Haji thinks? That the study is ethical, right? So Haji can be correct because we need to remember over here right now, we need to recall the ethical guidelines related to animal studies, right? So one of the ethical guidelines for studies which includes animals as participants is that there should be the smallest number of animals that should be used in a research. And in this study, like, you can get 1 mark for this. And what is happening is this is done, you need to explain it. This is done in order to meet the aims and goals of this study without harming much of this species. And then you need to write what was happening in the study by Yamamoto et al. So Yamamoto et al. Only used 5 chimpanzees in this study. So this is the evidence from the study that the study is following the ethical guidelines. Then if we are to write the second part, that why is Doty correct? So Doty says that the study is unethical. So we need to again recall the ethical guidelines of the study related to animals. So here we can write that one of the ethical guidelines is that behaviors cannot be controlled, the behaviors of the animals cannot be controlled by the use of rewards only, because this is going to make them feel distressed. That why are they not getting the reward, especially if it's something related to food. If they are getting food reward, then they are going to feel deprived of it if they are not given that particular reward when they are not acting in the certain desired way. So this should not be done. Behaviors of the animals cannot be controlled by the use of rewards only. They should be given other incentives. They should be treated in a better way. In this case, what happens is, in this case, it could be argued that one chimpanzee did get a reward at the expense of others only. This meant that the chimpanzee who did not receive a reward was stressed. Because the chimpanzees may have felt distress if they could not figure out which tool was the best choice. And then we have question number 9, which says that from this study by Saavedra and Silverman, outline what is meant by a phobia. So this is again a definitive type of a question. You just have to name what phobia is, and if it says outline, so you are going to get 1 mark per correct answer, per correct point. So it is an irrational fear of an object or a situation, and what happens is we feel anxious in the presence of that phobic stimulus. It can be anything, a situation or an object. So these are 2 detailed points which are going to give you 2 marks. Then what we have to do in the second part is we again have to outline what is meant by evaluative learning. So again it says outline, so you are going to get 1 mark per correct answer, per correct point. So what evaluative learning is? It is a form of classical learning, or you can also say classical conditioning. What happens is an individual perceives or evaluates a previously neutral event or object negatively as a result of complex cognitive processes. It is not important to write the last part, that as a result of complex cognitive processes, because if you have already written the first 2 points, it is a form of classical conditioning, and what happens is an individual perceives or evaluates a previously neutral event or object negatively. If you're just writing till negatively, that is also fine. You're going to get 2 marks. So in this one, you can like link it to the little Albert's study, because that boy was not scared of anything. He was not scared of the white rats before, but after the metal sound was associated with the white rats, he started to perceive that situation in which he could find white rats as fearful. And then in the part C, what we have to do, we have to explain one similarity and one difference between the study by Saavedra and Silverman and the study by Pepperberg. Saavedra and Silverman and Pepperberg are both from the learning psychology. We have to give one similarity and one difference, and it is for 4 marks. Sorry, it is for 8 marks. So you are going to get 1 mark for similarity, for describing and explaining the similarity between both of the studies, and 4 marks for describing the difference. So what we can do is, let's just write the similarity first. You can write that they both are from learning psychology. Their assumption is that a person can learn a certain behavior through classical conditioning or operant conditioning. Why operant conditioning? Because in this study by Saavedra and Silverman, the boy was given rewards from his mother for handling the situations, which included buttons. And in this study by Pepperberg, the parrot was also given rewards for giving the right answer. So both of them were taught through operant conditioning, and the difference can be Saavedra and Silverman used case study, which included a single participant and multiple research methods to gain valid and in-depth data, whereas in Pepperberg, laboratory experiment was used to create an artificial environment for Alex the parrot. Okay, so these can be the differences and the similarities. If you're explaining it with more detail, you can gain up to 4 marks for each of them, and you will get 8 marks for the whole answer. In question number 10 says, evaluate the study by Andrade in terms of 2 strengths and 2 weaknesses. At least one of your evaluation points must be about the use of independent measures design. So you can either use independent measures design as a strength or your weakness. So let's say I'm using it for weakness. So first we have to mention two strengths. We can write that one strength was that the study was standardized. How was it standardized? Each participant listened to the same mock phone call with the same voice and a monotonous tone. They were also given the same task. So what it does is it increases the test retest reliability of the study as it can be replicated. Okay, so replicability is increasing, which means your reliability of the study is also increasing because your results can be matched again. They can be investigated again. Another strength can be use of quantitative data. Scores from both the groups were simply compared and analyzed. So quantitative data, what it does is this allows the study to be objective and makes the results easier to analyze. It can increase the reliability of the results. Again, the reliability can be increased. Moving on to the weaknesses. One weakness, let's say I'm using independent measures design as a weakness. So one weakness is independent measures design. Why is it a weakness? Because it is possible that since this design includes different participants in each group, there is a possibility that all the people with sharp memory were added in the doodling group, which is why they scored higher than the other group. This decreases the validity of the results because the results are not accurate, because we don't know if the high score was due to doodling or it was because the characteristic of the participants was same. And another weakness can be the generalizability of the study, because the sample was from the same psychology unit, which means cultural bias can occur because all the participants were from the same background. They might have same characteristics, and only 40 participants were included. Hence, the results cannot be applied to a wider population. Which means the study is low in generalizability. So this is it for this paper. I hope everything was clear.